Hello, Dark Reader, and welcome to the Dark Side of the Library podcast. My name is Katie. Today we're going to be talking about The Bone Orchard. This is by Sara A. Mueller. This book is her debut book that was published by Tor. Carrie and I did our curated books, and I remember reading this summary, and I was like, okay, I have to read this book. There's just a lot going on, and I'm going to share that with you right now, just because I have to intrigue you and help you understand exactly why I decided to pick this up. All right, so here's what the publisher has to say. Mueller creates an intricate and richly characterized world in her gothic fantasy debut. Charm is a witch, and she is alone. The last line of conquered necromantic workers now confined within the yard of regrown bone trees at Orchard House and the secrets of their marrow. Charm is a prisoner and a survivor. Charm tends the trees and their clattering fruit for the sake of her children, painstakingly grown and regrown with its fruit. Shame, justice, desire, pride, and pain. Charm is a whore and a madam. The wealthy and powerful of Beauregard come to her house to buy time with the girls who aren't real, except on Tuesdays, which is when the emperor himself lays claim to his mistress, Charm herself. But now Charm is also the only person who can keep an empire together. As the emperor summons her to his deathbed and charges her with choosing which of his awful, faithless sons will carry on an empire, by discovering which one is responsible for his own murder. If she does this last thing, she will finally have what she has been denied her since the fall of Inchil, her freedom. But she will also be betraying the ghosts past and present that live within her heart. Charm must choose her dead emperor's will or whispers of her own ghosts, justice for the empire or her own revenge. See, there's a lot going on in this book, and that reflects, but let's talk about Sara A. Mueller for a second, and then we'll talk about my thoughts. So according to Sara A. Mueller's page, she is a seamstress, a horsewoman. Sara A. Mueller writes speculative fiction in the green and rainy Pacific Northwest, where we live. She lives with her family, numerous recipe books, and a forest of fountain pens. In a nomadic youth, she trod the earth of every state but Alaska and lived in 6 of them. She's an amateur historical costumer, gamer, and cook. The Bone Orchard is her debut novel from Tor, and this was published March 22nd. So if you like her about page and how it was written, that is actually kind of similar to the book. She writes beautifully. It's very imaginative. There's a lot of gorgeous literary usages. We're going to get into my thoughts about the book. First, though, I want to give out a disclaimer. This book is quite dark. It's violent. It's based in a war-torn country, so there's a lot of wartime trauma and events that do happen. That includes things like assault, there's gore, there's murder, there's betrayal, there's a death of a child, a lot of tragedies. There's a lot of going back in the past. It talks even further about other places in wartime, so that kind of increases the trauma aspect. So it is very dark, including even the magic system is a little weird. Weird in a cool way, actually, but it's still dark because it's a little bit like necromancy and Frankenstein together. So that's actually the first thing I'm going to talk about is charm and the magic system, because that's something that I really liked in the book. I thought it was so cool, so unique. I hadn't really seen a combination of science and magic together. So that was one of my pros of this book. So we have a very intricate world, an intricate magic system, and a lot, just in general, there's a lot of detail that is going into this magic system. So we have a country that had to deal with people, so basically like witches that have psychic powers, and they had gone mad. Now they have the technology, mind locks, that are inserted into psychics' brains, and they control their powers, but kind of their thoughts and memories and actions and all kinds of stuff. Charm is one of those people. She can read people through physical touch, and it comes in handy clearly through her job, but it's also incredibly useful for seeking who the Emperor's killer actually is, even though it takes so freaking long. Another interesting part about the magic system, too, is her children that she talks about. Shame, justice, pride, pain, desire. Charm was able to divvy kind of the worst parts of herself into basically like clones of herself. They are those particular faults that she just didn't want to be a part of her. She like shoved them out of her. So Charm will harvest skeleton parts from these bone trees in Orchard House. And once she has a full body, the lady of Orchard House will put them in a grow tank, and then a body will start actually growing. And that's a way for her to basically populate Orchard House so she has actual workers. And they're also bits of her own persona. Each of these embodiments and emotional embodiments have specific purposes over time and really have become their own self. Even though they're a part of Charm, they are also separate. It's really cool, actually. So that whole thing was really fun and something I really enjoyed, even though it was getting to that point took a while. But you can understand why that would be, mixing science, magic together. Not only that, Charm is living in a world where her people were not okay, and she's trying to survive, and she's also a prisoner. So that's kind of what that comes from. The other parts of the book, though, are kind of where it falls short. So first of all, the pacing of this book is all over the place. It feels really clunky. It's hard to keep up. I oftentimes felt very lost. But here's something maybe this will help you. Before you even decide to pick this book up, I do not recommend the audiobook. I honestly feel like I would do a lot better if I had the book in my hand, maybe even a notepad, just to figure out exactly what was going on and make my own diagram. It would have really helped to have, I don't know, maybe a map or some sort of hierarchy. There's a lot of characters in this book. So not only do we have Charm and all of her children, like shame, desire, pride, etc., we have the Emperor, we have the Emperor's children, and we have all of the other characters on the side. So we have fire drinkers, too, which, by the way, is a really cool term. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of names being thrown around, and when I was listening to the audiobook, I was like, oh no, I don't know who this is. So that's just a tip from me to you, is read the actual novel. It would probably make a lot more sense. But even so, I have read a lot of reviews because honestly, when you're lost, you're like, am I the only one that was lost? That's not true, actually. There's a lot of people that have gotten lost. Lots of things needed to get trimmed. She would over-explain specific parts of the book or say the same things over and over again, and it just kind of added to the actual quantity of the book itself that didn't need to happen. It just didn't really feel like there was a flow. It felt like you would hit a bunch of rocks. It was like going through a windy river where sometimes it would be really slow and smooth and peaceful. And then you'd hit a bunch of rocks and it'd be fast and you're like, oh my God, what's happening? So that's kind of how I felt while I was reading the book. And I understand that I think Sara A. Mueller is trying to now create a very complicated world. Already we have the complexities of Charm and her magic and why she's even a madam at this orchard house, the orchard house itself, all of this stuff. But now we're including the Emperor, his sons, and all of this political intrigue, his generals, trusted ones, the Emperor's wife. Like, there's so many people that are being incorporated into this novel. Political intrigue in general is understandably going to be very complicated in a time where we have an emperor who has all of these sons that have very, very strong faults that don't necessarily add up to being a good emperor. It makes things a little difficult. You would think it'd be like Game of Thrones where, we have like a Cersei and the Lannisters and that kind of political intrigue. No, I didn't get any of that. And I've read Game of Thrones, and I did not feel as lost as I do with this book. Anyway, I can go on about how confusing it was for a while. I think the Emperor's death is interesting. I just think it probably could have been thought out better and it could have been fleshed out. There's a lot of elements that I think that Sara A. Mueller is trying to juggle around that bog the book down a bit. It's hard to explain because it's like this book needs to be longer, but it also needs to be shorter. We get a lot more information as time goes by. There's a lot of twists and turns and reveals, which means that we now need extra information versus just keeping it contained in the information we already know. But now we're expanding on the world even further. But then it's like, but do we need this? And, so it just like it keeps growing, but it doesn't need to. It's crazy. Another thing that I didn't recognize either was I thought this was going to be set more kind of in medieval times, but then I realized, they're using guns. So there's it's fantasy, but it's also in the future. I keep thinking maybe comparing it to like maybe a steampunk like scenario with some magic. It's cool, but it is really complicated. One thing I did think was interesting about this book too was we have a lot of symbolism, and like I said earlier, there's a lot of dark themes, very strong themes, things that are suggested like sexual assault, but we learn also kind of about the world of sex workers too. We have the physical and mental abuse and just how people treat sex workers. We kind of get to see the depravity of humanity too and how fragile we really are. And we also see like how people can rise up and become stronger and be resilient when they need to. It's really interesting, and there's a lot of powerful points in this book as well. I just think it gets really bogged down with the political intrigue. If you're somebody that really enjoys a very complicated story with lots of intricacies, different people and storylines being weaved into each other, I think The Bone Orchard would be up your alley. It's got a mix of science and magic, a very unique, cool system I've never seen before. Very unique characters, but I just think there's too many. If that's something that doesn't bother you, though, I think this would be a great novel. From what I've read on many reviews, this book is kind of a split. You either really like it or you're not really sure about it. And for me, I was kind of on the not sure end. If any of these things appeal to you, check out The Bone Orchard by Sara A. Mueller. It's beautifully written. It just wasn't necessarily for me. I'd love to hear from you, though. Let me know your thoughts about The Bone Orchard. And you can do that on Facebook and Instagram, YouTube, and our Amazon Live channel. We do try to go live occasionally, so you can pop in on amazon.com/shop/darksideofthelibrary. So you can follow us there, and we'll pop up live every once in a while, and on YouTube. I'm going to try to get that all set up. If you do like this podcast, make sure to share it with your freaky loved ones. It really helps us out. And to check out our show notes, I tend to use our show notes as a catalog for looking up books that I've been wanting to read. You can check us out there. We do have affiliate links, just so you are aware. We like to publish every Wednesday and Friday, and we'll probably add some more episodes through the week just because there's so many books coming out. As fall is approaching, I can't believe I'm saying that. It's like June and I'm saying that. Oh! Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. I will talk at you later. Have a creep-tastic week.